Hello and welcome back to Simple Time Studios, where I read my solo RPG adventures for your entertainment. This time we're picking up Robert Manus' story right where we left off. Robert has just rescued Elroy and is trying to get out of the abandoned section of the Endless Mall, but things may not be as easy as they appear. Moving on to the setting truths that define our adventure, we are once again back in the Grimmerspace setting. Specifically the Endless Mall. We have a horror converted from the Xenophiles Bestiary, published by RNGM Games. This has been adapted to the Everyday Heroes rule set, which we are still continuing to use. Once again, this is a horror game. It'll be spooky, or at least I will try to make it. I intend to try and make it spooky. The rules and rubrics that define our adventure today are the Everyday Heroes RPG with supplementary material from Vault Volume 1, and the Solo Game Master's Guide by Geek Gamers. And having survived his previous adventure, Robert is now level 2. We'll see if that's enough for the challenges he faces. Our adventure begins. Pest Control. As the wrecked corpse of the renegade robot sat lifelessly, the electric spark of life disappearing from its eyes, Robert turned back to Elroy, the latter still clutching his broken ankle. Robert shook his head and smiled. Let's see if I can kit bash a splint out of whatever we have here so you can limp back to the elevator on your good leg. Going to start things off by having Robert make a skill check to try and assemble some kind of splint for Elroy's leg. He doesn't have medicine as a skill, but he does have survival, and in the core rulebook says yes, you can treat simple injuries with it, so 19 on a 1d20 plus 2. Pulling out his electric multi-tool, Robert started to disassemble the robotic corpse, then blinked. I'm an idiot, he grumbled as he took off his backpack and started rummaging through it before he found what he was looking for. A small canvas satchel with a staff and twin symbols of the Hospitalars stitched on the synthetic fabric flap. Soul Federation First Aid Kit. Don't leave home without one, he muttered as he quickly opened the first aid kit and started assembling a splint. The Who Federation? Elroy asked as Robert put the splint around the teenage Gylorian's leg and started lacing it together. Oh, long story, kid, Robert began as he finished up and quickly put everything else back into his backpack. Maybe I'll be able to tell you later, he added, grabbing his gear and helping Elroy back to his feet. Easy, he cautioned as he helped Elroy onto his good leg, and the lanky humanoid slowly got used to walking. As they slowly walked around the robotic corpse and back towards the elevator, Robert switched his pocket computer on and called up his handler at Endless Mall Security. Hello, this is Robert. I found Elroy and I'm making my way back to the service elevator now. His ankle's broken, so he's going to need a doctor as soon as we get back. You could have done a better job warning me about the murder robot, though. Even over the audio channel, the Vazarian executive oozed a certain sliminess that made Robert's skin crawl. The human commando wanted nothing more than to get paid and finish his job. This is great news. I'll have a medical robot waiting for you right outside the elevator, and I'll send your pay to your account as soon as we have Elroy. As for the renegade robots, I didn't think they would be so much trouble given your abilities. This caused Robert to stop walking halfway down the balcony and place a hand firmly on Elroy's shoulder to make him do the same. They? He asked, forcing to keep the panic out of his voice. It didn't escape him that the executive was referring to the threat in the plural sense. He quickly motioned for them to start walking again. Suddenly, the elevator that was supposed to take them back up was a lot further away than it was a few seconds ago. Yes, the store had 5 machines for repairing and recycling old toys. During the cyber attack, they all acquired a computer virus and started attacking customers. I understand it was very messy. The Ignatios had to be sent in. Unfortunately, the same computer virus that caused the robots to attack the customers made the Ignatios impossible to recall. We've been trying to reclaim the sector for years. Been losing far too much money on all this empty real estate. the endless mall executive replied, answering one question and giving Robert at least two more. 5 minus 1. Robert didn't like that math and tried to hurry Elroy along as fast as he could without accidentally breaking the kid's other ankle. He couldn't look down into the store below, but he could hear the metallic percussion of the other 4 robot spiders scurry around on the floor below. Stop, go. Stop, go. And on every go, they sounded closer. Sorry, gonna have to call you back, he mumbled before hanging up on his handler and sliding his pocket computer back into his pants pocket. They were almost there. They had just stepped into the old food court balcony when Robert made the decision to walk ahead of Elroy and call the service elevator down onto their level. The only thing betraying his nerves was how frantically he pressed the call elevator button. It wouldn't make the elevator come faster. He knew it wouldn't make it come faster, but he still didn't like hanging around in this abandoned toy store any longer than he already had. Elroy had just finished hobbling up to the elevator when a familiar boing echoed through the empty store, and both of them could see 4 robotic spider clowns leaping up from the floor below and landing on either side of the balcony to the otherwise empty food court balcony. The only way out was the elevator behind them, which had just opened with a soft electronic chime. Without a word, Robert grabbed Elroy by the shoulder and pushed him in ahead of the human mercenary. The Gylorian teenager nearly lost his balance and frantically grabbed at the railing inside of the elevator car as Robert came in behind him and slammed the buttons to close the doors and to take them anywhere above the store. With a sudden lurch, the elevator began its ascent. Robert let go of the breath he didn't realize he had been holding this entire time. All right. You all right, Elroy? My ankle still hurts, but other than that, thanks. Well, hopefully we'll get that fixed real soon. Bad enough that you had to leave it untreated for as long as you did, Robert replied as he watched the numbers on the digital display above the elevator door continue to go up. Was it his imagination, or was their ascent starting to slow down? So what's that about a Soul Federation? You aren't Adian? Adian. Robert Manus recognized the name. It meant someone from the Adian Combine. He was still learning about the 5 polities that made up most of this galaxy's political landscape, but he knew that the heavily urbanized and arcology-happy Adian Combine were the most human-looking out of all of them, close enough that biologists would have to consider parallel evolution. Though from what Robert saw, Gylorians like Elroy and the natives of some place called the Psalm Meld or something ran an extremely close second. With the elevator still climbing and nothing else to do, Robert saw no reason to ignore the question. No, I'm not Adian. Not sure you'd believe what I am, though. Leaning on his good leg in the elevator wall, Elroy looked at him with the kind of cockiness that only a teenager could possess. Try me. Robert laughed. Okay, you know that big purple splotch that appeared in the night sky on a dozen different planets in this galaxy? He began, wondering if the kid would notice that he said this galaxy. Yeah, all the news networks say it's a wormhole. There was an interplanetary polarity expedition out to it. Everyone sent ships, but none of them ever came back, Elroy replied, recalling what was probably a big story on all the local news networks. It is a wormhole, an artificial one. The other end connects to not one galaxy, but several. I know because I was part of the expedition sent to observe our end of it. Shot a whole bunch of probes into it, found at least 3 other galaxies, including this one, and unfortunately annoyed the people that made this wormhole in the first place. They came through, trashed our ship, then teleported us to this side of the wormhole. Now my expedition is scattered across your galaxy and hopefully not dying to a discount sci-fi horror freak show on any number of different planets, Robert replied, watching Elroy as it started to sink in for the young man. Elroy's eyes lit up as multiple questions were clearly vying for dominance in his head, his mouth opening and closing several times as he tried to figure out what to ask first. Robert may have not had any painkillers on him, but the sudden revelation he just dropped on the young native clearly did the job just as well. So how'd you end up getting stuck down there anyway? The Soul Commando asked, changing the subject. Yet whatever the Elroy's story was, the young Gylorian was cut off by the feeling of their elevator starting to slow down significantly. Robert looked at the floor number above the door. They had only climbed 40 floors. He then looked at the console at the button he had pressed. Yeah, he pressed the right button, and they should have another 10 floors or so to go before he was dealing with that Fazarian suit and Elroy was having his ankle looked at. An electronic chime rang through inside the elevator. Apologies, error. Apologies, error. A feminine voice spoke over a speaker in the ceiling. The local comptroller has selected this elevator for maintenance. Please disembark on the next floor. What? Both humanoids replied in unison before Robert continued. Listen, computer, I'm working on behalf of mall security. I have an individual that needs medical attention. Can't this maintenance wait until after we finish riding the elevator the rest of the way up? For a second, Robert thought he had appealed to whatever logic the Vazarians had this computer operating off of. Then, apologies. Please disembark on the next floor. Security Manager Rim has been notified, the female AI replied, stopping and opening the elevator car doors on a floor 9 levels below where they needed to be. Robert considered protesting but looked at Elroy first. There's no arguing with these things, is there? Elroy sighed and shook his head before walking out of the elevator car. Robert followed behind him. Behind them, the elevator car closed its doors and descended back down. Robert Manus looked at his surroundings as his pocket computer buzzed with an incoming communication from his handler. Elroy had managed to find a seat on a nearby bench while Robert answered his call. Robert here. I was just informed by the AI comptroller for that sector that your elevator was selected for maintenance and you were just kicked off. The Fazarian suit Rim replied instead of greeting. Yes, I didn't think your toasters would give me much of a choice. Robert shrugged, even though Rim couldn't see the gesture. That's not good. You're still in the sealed off levels, and that means the AI controlling the entire area might be corrupted. How did those kids get down and back up in the first place? Rim mused, clearly thinking about a number of things he didn't see fit to tell Manus about. Well, when you're done laughing at their stupid videos, you can ask them, Robert growled as he drew his laser rifle and scanned his surroundings. The elevator had dropped them off in a courtyard where 3 expansive corridors intersected, each of them lined with shops and stalls that seemed to go as far as the eye could see, and each of them a complete mess from people that had to leave in a hurry. Shopping bags were hastily dropped on the tile floor. Many vendors were still stocked with merchandise, and store counters occasionally had product left lying on them like someone was in the middle of making a purchase when they were forced to run. And happy, tinny music played on a sound system that Robert couldn't see. The whole scene sent chills down his spine. And was it his imagination, or did he hear the faint chittering of insects off in the distance? To his credit, Rim appeared to be too focused on getting Manus and Elroy out of there to notice that the former was starting to lose his patience. Let me just get you in touch with a security AI. Before the hardened Federation commando could object, the call was transferred over. Hello, shopper. I am the security AI for this part of the mall. You may call me Oracle. Robert looked over his shoulder. Okay, any relation to the AI that's apparently messing with us down here? Negative. They are on a separate unit on their own network. I do not have direct access to their systems. What does that mean, other than that you aren't infected by whatever made them go crazy? I cannot physically control security systems or maintenance systems, but I do have access to floor plans, directory of shops and services, and I can provide a general location of hostile threats, Oracle replied with a dutiful chirp. So you can look but can't touch. All right then, Oracle, let me ask you a couple of questions. Where is the best way out of here so we can get back to a friendly part of the mall? And also, he paused and looked at Elroy thoughtfully before turning back to his pocket computer. Is there a medical facility or auto dock somewhere here that can properly fix a broken ankle? Failing that, where is the nearest location for mobility scooters or similar devices on this level? And that, kids, is how you ask the Oracle. Speaking of which, is there some kind of clinic with functional robotic doctors in this stretch of the mall? It feels very unlikely that Robert should be that lucky, so 40% on the die says yeah, he's not that lucky. On the other hand, it's somewhat lucky that there might be an Easy Med auto dock somewhere in there, and that should have something that would work. 39 is less than 60, so yes, there is one. The best route out of this level is a staircase next to the custodial maintenance room, roughly northeast of your current position. Unfortunately, there are no full medical facilities within a reasonable distance. There is, however, an Easy Med station to the west of your current location that should provide a satisfactory solution, as the medical systems were spared from the cyber attack. Oracle replied to Robert's questions, the armored warrior noticing that Elroy shivered at the mention of Easy Med. All right, what about threats on this floor? And why do I hear chittering? Robert Manus added quickly, painfully aware that the clock was ticking and that the other unfriendly AI was likely sending those spider clown murder bots up the elevator shaft to chase after them. That would be the Ignatius, Oracle replied, bringing up a picture and a text reference onto Robert's pocket computer so he could quickly skim through to get the general gist. Most of them are hibernating in improvised hives now that there is little food, but a few are on patrol to protect the others. I would advise against going too far down the western corridor. Robert nodded, trying hard not to wince as he read the description of the Ignatius and focus on the task at hand. Okay, get the kid treated, then make our way to a stairwell in the employees-only section. Take the stairs until we get high enough to take an elevator or run out of stairs. Got it, he replied, signing off. All right, Elroy, let's get you fixed up so you have a fair chance of running away. Giant uplifted cockroaches with laser rifles and contact poisons. I really hate this galaxy, the blond human soldier grumbled as he helped Elroy off the ornate metal bench. Elroy got up and slowly limped alongside him as they made their way down the western corridor. Robert kept his rifle out and pointed ahead of them, his trigger finger rubbing against the trigger guard as he scanned his surroundings. Okay, clothing store, smelly soap store, exotic butter store, travel agency for some theme park with something that looks like a purple raccoon. What does an Easy Med station look like anyway? He asked Elroy as he tried to read off the signage. Elroy pointed to an unassuming eggshell white machine. Half of it looked like an oversized scanning booth for taking commemorative holograms or old-fashioned photographs, and most of the other half was a reasonably sized vending machine with common over-the-counter medicines like poison antidotes, antibiotics, and single-use hypo-injectors full of medi-nanites. The only contrast to the white plastic shell was a blue symbol that Robert assumed was a universal medical symbol for the gliding rim galaxy. He hoped it was, at least. Certainly would make finding medical aid easier in the future. Okay, is this thing going to ask you for money, and how much? Robert asked as they walked up to the machine. It's fine. The live streamer that left me down here dropped his wallet. I should have plenty of money, Elroy replied sheepishly as he walked into the booth side of the machine and the booth sealed shut behind him. Robert laughed and turned away. An inviting jingle tempted him to browse the automated pharmacy side of the machine, but he just ignored it. The Easy Med was in a little alcove, with no other way in or out, making it relatively easy to defend and hard to get taken by surprise as long as he was facing out into the corridor proper. Alright, I'm going to make a random will save against a DC 15 with no modifiers. 15 on the die. There was a small yelp of pain coming from inside the machine, so soft that Robert wasn't sure if he really heard it at first. Then a moment later, Elroy walked out, a splint in his hands, and his face as white as a sheet. But apparently his ankle was fixed. A few steps and it was clear that he was healed. I hate Easy Med auto docks, Elroy hissed. Stupid robots never tell you anything. It just does it and spooks you. The Gilorian grumbled as he handed the splint back to Robert. Let's go. Robert considered chiding Elroy as he shoved the unneeded splint back into his bag, but stopped when he considered what Elroy implied. Trapped in a metal coffin, getting stabbed and twisted in all sorts of ways by a robot that wasn't telling you why it was doing any of it. Probably no anesthetic or pain meds either. Yeah, that hardly sounded pleasant. Yeah, let's get out of here. Sooner we leave, sooner you can go back home and I can get paid. The armored trooper replied as the two of them backtracked to the central atrium, then down the north hallway. More small boutique stores stocked with everything from designer clothes and consumer electronics to novelty items and robotic toys. All of it left to collect dust. Do these two encounter an Ignatius patrol as they make their way to the exit? I give it a somewhat likely, and 29 is less than 60, so here we go. The chittering had been omnipresent background noise for so long that Robert almost didn't notice the noise getting louder until they were halfway down the hallway and about to walk past a smaller corridor lined with vending machines. Going to make a survival check to see if he spots the patrol and avoids attracting it. 12 on a 1d20 plus 2. Robert noticed the creature and stopped himself just as Ignatius walked out of the side hallway. Unfortunately, the creature looked in his direction and stared right at the two humanoids with its compound eyes. Seeing one in the flesh, Robert unfortunately realized how right his original perceptions were. Standing roughly 7 feet tall on its hind legs and cradling a crude laser rifle that looked about as sophisticated as a musket, it looked very much like a giant dark brown cockroach studded with small cybernetics. Long whip-like antenna flickered every which way as time seemed to slow down and both parties began to throw themselves into action. And time for initiative, kiddies. Robert gets a 7 on a 1d20 plus 2. The Ignatius gets a 14. This is already a great start. Robert thought he was fast, but the giant bug was faster. Shaking its whole body and spraying a spore-like substance behind it with a flick of its back wings, it raised its rifle and fired at Robert. Rolling to attack, the Ignatius drone gets an 11 on a 1d20 plus 6. Robert got lucky. The laser blast went wide, missing both males completely and carving a scorch mark above the signage for an empty consumer robotics store. Where the robots went was a question Robert didn't have time for as he fired back and shouted at Elroy. Go! Go! I'm right behind you! Robert fired back. Rolled a 9 on a 1d20 plus 4 with his laser assault carbine. As he shot back, Robert missed and hit the side of a vending machine, producing a shower of sparks as metal met laser. Seeing that he whiffed his shot, he moved around the Ignatius and after Elroy. Elroy bolted towards the employees-only doorway at the end of this wing of the mall. As both of them continued to try and put some distance between the Fazarian uplifted insect and themselves, Robert noticed the chittering was getting louder and more numerous. Damn it, that spray was a pheromone. The rest of the nest is waking up, Robert silently cursed. The Ignatius continued its deadly dance with its human opponent, chasing after Robert while firing its laser rifle. Ignatius attacks again. That's an 11 on a 1d20 plus 6. Robert is still lucky, but I'm not complaining. Laser beams continue to sizzle the air above Robert's head, filling the hallway with the smell of burnt ozone. Still running to maintain the distance, Robert turns and fires again. Rolls to attack again and gets a 1 on his attack roll. This is an automatic miss. Thank goodness his gun doesn't have the unreliable quality. That would have been a jam. On this shot, Robert completely missed his target and managed to shoot all the way down the corridor and scorch the door to the elevator that they had been kicked off at the start of this little fiasco. They needed to keep moving, though. The nest was stirring and coming that much closer. Robert didn't even want to think about how many more he would have to fight. Okay, one more round and then they will be through the double doors, taking them back to custodial maintenance. Now it's the Ignatius' turn again. 24 on a 1d20 plus 6. Time for an armor saving throw or Robert's taking 15 damage. He has a disadvantage on the save because it hasn't had time to repair his armor since last time. 17 on a d20. He barely makes it. Finally getting a bead on Robert, the oversized cockroach fired its laser rifle again and connected squarely with the tough commando's back. Despite being already damaged, his armor absorbed the attack and left him with little more than an uncomfortably warm spot where the armor plating saved him. Robert fired back. Wow, Robert can't hit anything today. 7 on 1d20 plus 4 against a defense of 12. Good thing they don't need to defeat the monsters, just escape them. Robert fired one more shot off from his laser rifle before disappearing into the tunnel to the stairs up to the next level. His last shot went wide and missed the Ignatius that was shooting at him, only to hit one of the dozens of Ignatius that were flooding out of that vending machine-lined corridor hallway halfway down this wing of the level. Dozens were filling into the empty shop-lined thoroughfare, and Robert quickly lost count of how many he was up against. With his rifle pressed against his chest, he ran through the double doors and after Elroy down a short hallway. Soon they were in a small machine shop where dozens of disc-shaped vacuum and scrubbing robots sat idle as they waited for instructions that were not coming. Elroy was already halfway up the staircase in the middle of the room. Robert was right behind him. Upstairs was an identical room to the one they just left. Robert found himself thanking whatever gods were listening for standardized architecture and symmetrical design. As they ran out of the maintenance shop, Robert deliberately lagged behind and saw the keypad next to the door. Hopefully this stunt will buy them at least a few minutes. Robert is going to make a mechanics check to scramble the electronic lock on the door and basically jam it shut behind him. While what he wants isn't complicated, there are things right behind him, so 13 on a 1d20 plus 3. Robert is really missing some of his tech-ed friends right about now, especially their toolkits. Stopping long enough to shut the door and pop the control panel open, he ripped out some wires to hopefully keep it shut for at least a few minutes. His sabotage done, he continued to run after Elroy. Walking out of the employee tunnel and into the mall proper, he found himself right behind Elroy. A Gylorian teenager was out of breath and looking at him hopefully. A trio of imposing security robots with the insignia of the Endless Mall Security Department on their shoulders were looking at both of them with shock weapons drawn. When they saw Robert, they all lowered their weapons ever so slightly. Contractor Manus, Security Manager Rim sent us to find you. Is this the individual you were sent to collect? The lead robot asked in an electronic voice. Yes, this is Elroy. I got him, so let's wrap this up and send him home. Robert replied and looked around, only now starting to realize where he was. And in some respects that scared him more than everything that just happened in the past hour. This level of the Endless Mall was still active. Shoppers moved between stores, followed by a procession of robotic caddies carrying their shopping bags. Custodial droids emptied trash cans and cleaned up floors. And occasionally shoppers would stop to gawk at the Gylorian teenager in ratty, patched-over clothes and the armored mercenary cradling an energy rifle, only to get shooed away by one of the security droids. No one seemed to have any idea that directly below their feet was a nest of hundreds of rogue biological attack drones, or a playground for insane murder bots below that, or that a broken door was currently the only thing keeping them safe. Satisfied by his answer, the security robots lowered their weapons further and turned towards an elevator on the far end of the cavernous room. Come, we'll take you to Rim's office, the lead robot intoned. Robert shrugged and then exhaled as he followed along. Looks like all that was left was to deal with the paperwork and get paid. The loose ends were going to be someone else's problem. Though judging by some of the smug looks he was getting for his freshly dented and burnt armor as he shouldered his rifle, he decided that a sudden monster attack wouldn't be the worst thing that could happen to these people. Though there was one other loose end he needed to address, but how to do it without looking too suspicious. Perhaps there was a way. Pulling out his pocket computer, he quietly started to scan for potential contacts by proximity. Robert's making a computer's check to find Elroy's contact information and slip him a message discreetly. He doesn't have proficiency in this skill, so it's an intelligence check. It's a basic use of his space future, not smartphone, but he's trying to do it discreetly. And he gets a 3 on a 1d20 plus 1. The pocket computer quickly isolated Elroy's personal communication device from the handful of others around them. Unfortunately, Robert started pressing buttons too fast, and a minute later, Elroy's communicator buzzed audibly. "Sorry, my device has been having trouble talking to the mall's network ever since I got here. I thought I was calling a fast food restaurant by the Truth Seeker's office," Robert immediately apologized. The security bots accepted Robert's explanation, and so did Elroy at first. But when he went to check his own device, he found a message from Robert. Curious and more than a little concerned about what the mercenary couldn't just say to him, he discreetly opened up the message and read it during the rest of the ride up. "Elroy, if you tell anyone what I told you about being from another galaxy, I will swear up and down that I am an Adian and everything I told you was about a novel I'm writing in my spare time. I will swear that the stress of being alone down there messed with your head and that you got it mixed up somehow. All things considered, you seem smart enough to figure out why. But just in case, there are people here, bad people, that would pay a fortune for that information. And not all of them are related to the guys that opened the wormhole. The idiot that hired me to save you from those psycho murder robots and giant bug cyborgs is one person that would probably be very interested in what I know." Elroy read the message and kept his expression neutral. He quickly typed up a short reply and programmed a delay after he clicked send so Robert wouldn't receive it until much later. "So that was all a novel? That story sounds awesome. If you ever need help writing it and are ever on Jylor, you should look up my father. He runs a repair shop fixing Starship life support systems in the port city. I have attached his contact information and address to this message." As the elevator arrived at their floor and their procession marched them into Rim's office, Elroy smiled inwardly. 2 days ago, 4 Fazarian live streamers found his little toy repair business and tricked him into following them into that abandoned toy store with the promise of bringing lost Fazarian robotic plushies back for Jylorian children. Now he felt like he had stumbled upon something much bigger. End of session.